everybody, what's up and welcome back to the garden. Today we are going to take a closer look at growing sweet peas. Now, I should mention these aren't sweet peas for the vegetable garden. These are ornamental sweet peas, Lathyrus Odoratus or whatever they are called. It's important to make that distinction because here where I live, that always gets all jumbled up and one is toxic and you can't eat it. So that's important to make that distinction. We are growing these this year because they are so ornamental and fragrant and gorgeous. Not only that, they're excellent to use in cut flower arrangements. So that's really what we're going to be going after. We're going to go after these nice, long, tall stems that are going to look absolutely amazing in a vase and add that just nice hint of fragrance for us. The first thing we want to do, obviously, when we are deciding to grow sweet peas is we want to decide when we are going to plant them. This is going to be the most important part. In general, sweet peas are a cool season flower. There are annual and perennial types. Specifically, this video is referring to the annual type just because that's the type that I have the most experience growing. These flowers do really like to grow during periods of cool weather. Here in zone 6B7 in Kentucky, that's a major issue because my summers get pretty hot pretty fast and the spring is really short. So that means for me, what I have to do is I have to plant these seeds in the fall. Whether or not you plant these seeds in the fall or in the spring is just going to depend on where you live. If you live somewhere with summer temperatures that are a little bit milder, you might have success growing these from seed in the spring. If obviously you live somewhere with winter temperatures that are a little bit milder, obviously you might be able to plant these in the fall with no problem. For me personally, here in my zone, I'm kind of in the middle spot. In the wintertime, it gets cold. We get snow and ice temperatures. The extreme lows are usually about -2 Fahrenheit over the winter, but that's only for a very brief period of time. Even though these sweet peas are very tolerant of frost and some freezes and even snow, in my garden, to have them overwinter reliably, I have to make sure that I cover them with either a frost blanket or a low tunnel, or that I plant them in an unheated hoop house. Of course, there are other ways to do this. Give this a try. For example, if you aren't able to have access to an unheated hoop house, you can plant these seeds into the ground in the fall and try to overwinter them using either just a milk jug cut in half to serve as a greenhouse. You really have to kind of get creative with these. When I protect these with a hoop house or something, usually I'm able to overwinter the seedlings 100%. However, if I just leave them outside, usually I get about a 50% survival rate here where I am. So it really is kind of a roll of a dice and a gamble. And the whole process of growing these is really about just learning what works for you and what works in your garden. And the whole thing is just trial and error. I know that's unfortunate, but if you are successful, you will have some really nice tall sweet peas. The process of starting these sweet pea seeds is actually very easy. The first thing I'm going to do is soak the seeds. Soaking these seeds is just going to get these seeds ready to start kind of germinating just a little bit quicker because the seed coats are very kind of hard. With that said, I don't scratch the seeds with sandpaper or any of those other practices. They seem to germinate pretty readily beyond the soaking. You have a couple of options. You can start these in a tray, obviously. However, I would not recommend that. Sweet peas seem to have a very long taproot that doesn't really like to be disturbed. I know for this reason a lot of people use the very deep root trainers instead of just a regular seed tray. Also, another option for that is to use, like I said, either an old 2-liter bottle. This is convenient because you can put the seeds in the bottle, and you can fill that bottle halfway up with soil. So it's basically like you have a root trainer. Those roots can go nice and deep, so that's another option. Also, when doing that, if you plant 3 seeds in one container, you can just transplant the whole container and not worry about separating seedlings. What I like to do personally is I like to just go ahead and direct sow these in the garden For me, for a fall sowing, I usually direct sow my sweet pea seeds at about the end of September. This is probably about 4 to 6 weeks before my first frost date in the fall. This gives them plenty of time to germinate in the cooler temperatures, and they should be ready to handle any kind of frost that shows up. Planting in the fall is not an option. You also have the option of winter sowing. The winter sowing method works phenomenally well with sweet peas, especially if, like me, you're somewhere where the summer heats up really fast. With winter sowing, these seeds will germinate throughout the winter, and as long as you plant them as soon as the soil can be worked, you will have pretty good sized flower blooms. The plants won't be as tall as if they were started in the fall, but they will get a decent height and the stems will be decently long. It won't be the best results, but it will be somewhat successful. Of course, you can always direct sow as soon as your soil can be worked in the spring if you live somewhere a little cooler. I personally can't do that here where I live, because by the time the soil can be worked in the spring, the growing season just isn't long enough, and I won't get any flowers before those, sweet pea vines start to shrivel up and die, which is unfortunate, but sometimes we have to really just take into account our own weather. When planting these sweet peas into the garden, we are going to make sure that we are digging our planting location very deep. I've made this mistake a lot, and it really does make a difference. When it comes to preparing the soil, I usually neglect things quite a bit, but for sweet peas, you can't really do that. I usually like to dig the soil a depth about 1.5 feet and make sure it's just nice and loose. Make sure it has a lot of just nice finished compost, and I even add a little fertilizer at planting time when I'm planting transplants. I use a seabird guano, Peruvian seabird guano. That's just the general fertilizer I use in my garden. I think there's an Amazon link to it down in the description below in case you're wondering about it. It has a high nitrogen number, it has a high second number, so that's one that I really like. If I'm planting this in an unheated hoop house through the winter, obviously I'm going to need to care for it. I'm going to have to cover these plants with row covers. I usually use a row cover in the hoop house when temperatures get below about 28 degrees Fahrenheit. Anytime the temperature is below freezing, the hoop house is going to be closed, unless of course it is a bright sunny day, because those temperatures can get really warm really fast. The process of learning to regulate temperature in the hoop house is basically trial and error. You want it not too cool, not too hot, just keeping a nice consistent temperature throughout the winter. Once the winter has passed and spring arrives, these will resume their growth, and before we know it, we'll have just beautiful sweet pea flowers that we can pick for cut flower arrangements or just enjoy and watch the butterflies. Overall, the process is fairly simple once you iron out the details of when and how and taking care of them. I know it sounds a little bit intimidating, especially if you've never done it before, but I definitely encourage you guys to give it a try, because these are absolutely just beautiful, and I think they're definitely an essential flower if you're wanting to grow your first cut flower garden ever. Maybe not your first one, but if you've been growing cut flowers for a while and you want to expand your flowers in your garden, I think this is definitely a good choice. There's so many options out there in terms of color. If you are growing for cut flowers, do make sure that you get one of the tall varieties and not accidentally buy one of the dwarf varieties, because there are dwarf varieties out there which look great in container plantings, so that's something to consider too. That's really about it for this video. As always, be sure to leave your comments down below. I'd love to hear them. I'd try to help if I can. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe. I'd love to have you. We're making new content all the time. Cut flower garden, DIY projects, you name it. There's really no telling what I might make next. I hope that you guys are having such an amazing day, and I will talk to y'all later. Bye, guys.